Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I am here to bring you a battle between the Core Set 2021 Planeswalker decks and the Face the Hydra challenge deck from Theros. We'll be playing 2 games against the Hydra, first on normal difficulty with 3 Hydra heads and then on hard mode. And for these games we'll be using 2 hero cards. The first one is a Harvester. It says tap, draw a card, then discard a card. And then we have the Warrior, which says tap, target creature you control, gains haste until end of turn. Because I only have 1 copy of each of these cards, we're going to be applying them to all 5 decks simultaneously. We'll go ahead and get started by drawing our opening hands. Basri draws Basri's Aegis, Plains, Aven Gagglemaster, Tempered Veteran, Makeshift Battalion, and Basri's Lieutenant. I don't like having just 2 lands, but I'm going to have to hope that we can get into the other lands because I think it's still a keepable enough hand. Teferi draws Jeskai Elder, Charmed Sleep, Island, Mystic Skyfish, Shipwreck Dowser, Fairy Vandal, and Mantle of Tides. 1 land is not a keeper, so we're going to mulligan. And because this is multiplayer, we get 1 free mulligan. Now we have an Island, Fairy Vandal, Jeskai Elder, Island, Frantic Inventory, and Island. I think this is a fine hand to keep, so we will do so. Liliana draws a Swamp, a Liliana Scrounger, a Swamp, and a Swamp. I do not think we keep a 6 Swamp hand, and so we're going to mulligan this and try to do something a little bit better with our free mulligan. Now we have a Gourmand, a Liliana Scrounger, Durable Coilbug, Swamp, Durable Coilbug, and Fancy Swamp. I think that this is a reasonable hand to keep. Chandra draws a Mountain, Heartfire Immolator, Stormcaller, Pyroceratops, Mountain, and Mountain. I don't like that there are 3 mountains here, but we do have a 2, 3, and 4, and so I think this is a keepable hand. Garruk draws a Forest, Almighty Brushwag, Wildwood Patrol, Forest, Almighty Brushwag, and Garruk's Uprising. It's not great, but I think the synergy between the Wildwood Patrol and the Garruk's Uprising is enough to keep. Because this is multiplayer, we will draw on the first turn. Basri draws a Plains, we'll play the Plains, and then Basri will pass the turn. Teferi draws a Mantle of Tides, we'll play an Island, and then we will tap the Island to cast Mantle of Tides. This is an equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+2. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, attach Mantle of Tides to target creature you control. And then Teferi will pass the turn. Liliana draws a Swamp, we'll play the Swamp, and Liliana will pass the turn. Chandra draws a Sure Strike, we'll play a Mountain, and then Chandra will pass the turn. Garruk will draw a Ram Through, we'll play a Forest. We'll tap the Forest and cast an Almighty Brushwag. This is a 1/1 Brushwag with Trample, and for 3 and a green, it gets +3/+3 until end of turn. And then Garruk will pass the turn. We'll go to the Hydra's turn. The Hydra will cast the topmost card. This is a Distract the Hydra. It's a sorcery. Each player may sacrifice a creature. Each player who sacrificed a creature this way chooses a head and taps it. Each player who didn't sacrifice a creature loses 3 life. I think right now we can all afford to lose 3 life, so we'll all do that, taking every deck down to 17, and then we'll take 3 more damage from the assembled heads to go down to 14 each. Then at the end of the Hydra's turn, we'll use the Harvester. Basri will draw a Fight as 1, and then we will discard the Fight as 1. Teferi will draw a Fairy Vandal, and we will discard a Frantic Inventory. Liliana will draw a Liliana Scrounger, and we will discard 1 Durable Coilbug. Chandra will draw a Mountain and will discard a Mountain. Garruk will draw a Primal Might and we will discard a Ram Through. We'll untap. Basri draws a Tempered Veteran. Teferi draws a Gust of Wind. Liliana draws a Grim Physician. Chandra draws a Chandra Flames Catalyst. Garruk draws a Forest. Basri will play the Plains, and then we'll tap both of these to cast the Tempered Veteran. This is a 1/2 human knight with white. Tap, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature with +1/+1 counter on it. 4 white tap, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Teferi will play an Island. Then we'll tap the islands and cast a Jeskai Elder. This is a 1/2 human monk with prowess. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Liliana plays a Swamp. We'll tap both of these to cast a Durable Coilbug. This is a 2/2 insect with 4 black return Durable Coilbug from your graveyard to your hand. Chandra plays a mountain, taps them both, and will cast the Heartfire Immolator. This is a 2/2 human wizard with prowess. You can pay red and sacrifice it to deal damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker. Garruk plays a forest. We'll tap a forest to cast another Almighty Brushwag. We will tap the warrior to give each of the new creatures haste, and we'll go to combat. The Durable Coilbug will attack one Hydra head. The Heartfire Immolator will attack another Hydra head. Each of the Brushwags will attack one of the Hydra heads that the 2-drops were attacking. This will kill 2 Hydra heads. They say when it leaves the battlefield, each player gains 2 life, and so each player will gain 4 life apiece. But first we're going to reveal 4 cards to see if there are any new heads. There are no new heads. Each player will go up to 18. And then we'll go to the Hydra's turn. The Hydra will cast the top card. This is a Hydra head. It is a 0/3 head. And then we will take 2 damage apiece to go down to 16 each. And at the end of the Hydra's turn, we will use the Harvester. Basri draws a Plains, and we will discard the second Tempered Veteran. Teferi draws a Mystic Skyfish, and we will discard the Mystic Skyfish. Liliana draws Liliana Death's Mage. We will discard Liliana Death's Mage. Chandra draws another Heartfire Immolator. We will discard the Sure Strike. Garruk draws a Ram Through. We'll discard the Ram Through. We'll untap. Basri draws a Plains. Teferi draws an Island. Liliana draws a Grasp of Darkness. Chandra draws an Unleash Fury. Garruk draws a Predatory Worm. Basri will play a Plains. We'll tap all of these to cast the Makeshift Battalion. This is a 3/2 human soldier, and whenever it and at least 2 other creatures attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on Makeshift Battalion. Teferi plays an island. We'll tap 2 islands and we'll cast a Fairy Vandal. This is a 1/2 Fairy Rogue with flash and flying. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Fairy Vandal. Liliana will play a Fancy Swamp. We'll tap all 3 of these and we'll cast Liliana Scrounger. This is a 3/2 human wizard. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, you may put a loyalty counter on a Liliana Planeswalker you control. Chandra will play a mountain. We'll tap all of the mountains to cast a Stormcaller. This is a 3/2 Ogre Shaman. It says when it enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. This will take the 2 Hydra heads down to 1 health each. Garruk will play a forest. We'll tap all 3 forests and we'll play a Wildwood Patrol. This is a 4/2 Centaur Scout with Trample. Teferi will go to combat and send the Jeskai Elder to finish off 1 Hydra head. Garruk will send another Brushwag to finish off the other Hydra head. The Hydra heads die. We'll reveal 4 cards to see if there are any new heads. There are no new heads, and so the Core Set 2021 Planeswalker decks defeat the Hydra on normal difficulty. We'll be right back for hard mode. Alright, it's time for hard mode. We have 4 Hydra heads up there. We're going to get started by drawing our opening hands. Basri draws a Plains, a Tempered Veteran, Avengale Master, Vanishing Light, and Adherent of Hope. It's not a great start, but I guess this will work. Teferi draws a Charm Sleep, Shikrit Dowser, Island, Frantic Inventory, Island. This is probably a little too slow, so we will mulligan this. Teferi draws a Frantic Inventory, Fairy Vandal, Tome Anima, Historian of Zhalfir, Island. I don't love this, but I think we can keep it. Liliana draws a Grim Physician, Swamp, Grim Physician, Grasp of Darkness, Swamp, and Swamp. This is a pretty bad hand, but I think we're going to keep it just because we have Grim Physicians and hopefully we can loot into something better. Chandra draws a Mountain, Paraceratops, Stormcaller, Chandra's Incinerator, Stormcaller, and Mountain. It's a little bit of a slow hand, but I think we have to keep it. Garruk draws a Forest, Nessian Hornbeetle, Forest, Garruk's Warsteed, Titanic Growth, Predatory Worm, and Pride Malkin. This is a bit of a slow hand, but I think we're going to keep it. Since it's multiplayer, we'll all draw for our opening turn. Basri draws a Plains. Teferi draws an Island. Liliana draws a Gormand. Chandra draws an Infuriate. Garruk draws a Forest. Basri will play a Plains. Teferi will play an Island. Liliana will play a Fancy Swamp. We'll tap the Swamp and cast a Grim Physician. This is a 1/1 zombie, and when it dies, target creature an opponent controls gets a -1/-1 until end of turn. Chandra will play a Mountain. Garruk will play a Forest. We'll pass the Hydra, which will cast the topmost card. This is a Noxious Hydra Breath. It's a sorcery, choose 1. It deals 5 damage to each player, or destroy each tapped non-head creature. We can destroy each tapped non-head creatures, because there are none. And then we will take 4 each to go down to 16 apiece. At the end of the Hydra's turn, we'll use the Harvester. Basri will draw a Plains, and we will discard the Banishing Light. Teferi will draw an Island, and we will discard the Tome Anima. Liliana will draw a Swamp, and we'll discard the Swamp. Chandra will draw a Mountain, and we'll discard the Infuriate. Garruk will draw a Garruk's Harbinger, and we will discard the Titanic Roof. We'll untap. Basri draws an Anointed Chorister. Teferi draws a Teferi's Wavecaster. Liliana draws a Swamp. Chandra draws a Carol Cape Disciples. Garruk draws a Drowsing Pteranodon. Basri will play a Plains. We'll tap both Plains and cast the Adherent of Hope. This is a 2/1 Human Soldier. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control a Basri Planeswalker, put a +1/+1 counter on Adherent of Hope. Teferi will play an Island. Liliana will play a Swamp. We'll tap a Swamp and cast another Grim Physician. Chandra will play a Mountain. Garruk will play a Forest. We'll tap both of these and we'll cast the Nessian Hornbeetle. This is a 2/2 insect. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control another creature with power 4 or greater, put a +1/+1 counter on Nessian Hornbeetle. We'll tap the Warrior to give every new creature haste. We'll attack one Hydra head with the Adherent of Hope. We'll attack that same head with the Physician, and then we'll attack a new head with the Grim Physician. The Hornbeetle will attack that second head. 2 heads die. We'll gain 4 life apiece to go up to 20 each. We'll reveal 4 cards to see if there are any new heads. There's 1 new Hydra head. Then we'll pass the turn to the Hydra. The Hydra will cast the topmost card. This is Noxious Hydra Breath. This time we'll take the 5 damage each. We'll take 8 damage apiece to go down to 12 each. At the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Basri draws a Makeshift Battalion, and we will discard the Tempered Veteran. Teferi draws an Island, and we will discard the Island. Also at the end of the turn, we'll tap both islands, and we'll cast a Fairy Vandal. Liliana draws an Alchemist Gift, and we'll discard a Swamp. Chandra draws a Carol Keep Disciples, and we will discard a Pyroceratops. Garruk draws a Forest, and we will discard the Pride Malkin. We'll untap. Basri draws a Plains. Teferi draws an Island. Liliana draws a Swamp. Chandra draws a Heartfire Immolator. Garruk draws a Garruk's Uprising. Basri will play a Plains. We'll tap all 3 Plains to cast a Makeshift Battalion. Teferi will play an Island. We'll tap 2 mana to cast a Frantic Inventory. This is an instant. It says draw a card, then draw cards equal to the number of cards named Frantic Inventory in your graveyard. We'll draw a card, and then we have an Island. This will put a +1/+1 counter on the Fairy Vandal because it's the second card drawn this turn. Liliana will play a Swamp. Chandra will play a Mountain. We'll tap all 3 of these to cast a Stormcaller. That will deal 2 damage to the Hydra heads. Garruk will play a Forest. We'll tap all 3 of these to cast Garruk's Harbinger. This is a 4/3 beast with hexproof from black. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may reveal a creature card or Garruk planeswalker card from among them and put it in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. We'll tap the Warrior to give each of the new creatures haste. As we go to combat, we will put a counter on the Hornbeetle. We'll attack one of the heads with the Harbinger, and the final head with a Battalion. That'll defeat all 3 heads, getting us 6 life apiece to take us up to 18. We'll reveal 6 cards to see if there are any new heads. There are no new heads, and so we defeat the Hydra on hard mode with the Core Set 2021 Planeswalker decks. This was unusually easy due to the randomness of not drawing that many new heads, and so I think that this was a bit of a fluke, but you got to see these Planeswalker decks take down the Hydra with not much difficulty. Let me know what your thoughts were about the games in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This is Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.